Did you know that Europeans aren't actually indigenous to anywhere? That's right. One day, a long, long time ago, the English, the Germans, the French, the Italians, Spaniards, etc., all just emerged from the ground and claimed their kingdoms fully formed. Just one day, there was nothing there, and then France. Germany, England, all of these things just popped up overnight, and the rest of the world looked on in abject confusion, apparently. Or at least, so is suggested by this wonderful little United Nations map here. So, the person who posted this, Vintage Maps, I don't think he meant anything by this, he just posts vintage maps. And upon posting this, he got a lot of hate for what this map seems to suggest. So let's have a little bit of a closer look, shall we? This is from the United Nations idea of indigenous people. Now, when this was created some time ago, they didn't have an official definition. They do now, which we'll get back to. But as a lot of people noted, there were apparently no indigenous people whatsoever in Europe. Not in Iceland, Ireland, England, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, Denmark, Netherlands, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, nothing. Ukraine as well, which is rather amusing considering what's currently going on. I mean, if the Ukrainians aren't from Ukraine, what claim do they really have to it? Turkey as well, incidentally, has no indigenous population, which... I feel as if there was some stuff happening there with minority groups some time ago, but details. So, what the hell is this? As apparently vast swaths of the earth has never had an original population, as that is of course what indigenous means. It is the populace that were originally from that area, and it is how we use it in common parlance. It is how we refer to the American Indian, for example, the indigenous population. But of course, in a lot of these countries, the indigenous population were different subgroups of the people who were already there. See, there weren't Germans, 200 years ago? There were Bavarians, there were Hanoverians, etc., divided into dozens and dozens of principalities. There weren't Italians, there were people from Lombardy, there were people from Naples. There wasn't always a France, there wasn't always in England. All of these countries were eventually created by groups of people joining together, and in many of them even today, there are absolutely, shall we say, liberation movements that don't want to be a part of these countries any longer. But, okay, let's look at what is the UN's definition then. Indigenous people are inheritors and practitioners of unique cultures and ways of relating to people and the environment. They have retained social, cultural, economic, and political characteristics that are distinct from those of the dominant society in which they live. So, this is the important part here. What is an indigenous person? An indigenous person is a minority. As we can also see here, with China apparently having an indigenous population of a measly 125 million, out of a country of like 1 billion plus people. Okay. Right, so the Han Chinese, despite being from that area, are not indigenous because they are not the minority, alright? Seems an arbitrary decision, but even then, of course, it doesn't really quite fit, because, as I mentioned, in Spain, for example, for the last couple hundred years, there have been groups of people trying to get away from Spain, Catalonia, or, notice as well, Scotland. Apparently, the Scottish are not a minority on the British Isles. The Scottish are simply just Englishmen with weird accents. I feel like that would piss off the Scots. They were nice enough to demarcate Northern Ireland and Ireland, however, so that's nice of them, but Germany is all one big piece, despite that probably being the most disparate nation the most recently as well. So even the idea of minority doesn't really quite fit. So when we are saying indigenous people, what is it that the UN really means? They mean primitives, they mean savages, they mean conquered peoples. That's what they mean. As I point out as well, Afghanistan doesn't have an indigenous population. But the Afghanis have proven remarkably capable of resisting everyone who's been invading them, from the Muslims to the Mughals to the British to the Russians to the Americans, etc. So yeah, I guess they aren't a conquered people. Meanwhile, the people that are ruled over by the Han Chinese, conquered people. The disparate numbers of Asiatic hordes in Russia, conquered people. The Sami of Finland, Sweden and Norway, well, they're not even so much conquered people as they're immigrants. Okay? This is why I despise the Sami, because like something like 1,000 years after the rest of us arrived, the Sami waffled across the borders and settled. And we're like, this is ours now. We can't take it by military force, and we can't defend ourselves if you decide to evict us, but look at us. We're savages. We're no threat to you. And unfortunately, that argument seemed to have sunk home, and these days they use their position as the indigenous population of Norway. They literally do use terms like that, the ancient population that arrived after the other population, to extract special privileges and rights beyond those of the general Norwegian populace. For example, the Sami are uniquely allowed to do reindeer farming, I guess is the term or whatever in English, in the northern halves of Norway, which is illegal for Norwegians. So we have decided to give a immigrant set of people special privileges beyond those afforded to the actual populace of the country. We've even given them their own little self-rule style system with their own parliament. Idiotic nonsense. And why? Again, because of their status as indigenous. This is nothing more than a way, in essence, to prey upon the European mind, of going, but look at these poor savages, these poor sad Stone Age barbarians. We must take special care of them, for if not, they should be eaten by the ferret population, I presume. Maybe the seals would feast upon them. Anyways, they need the protection of a larger, more sophisticated and successful state. Otherwise, they'd be eradicated by, well, any other sentient creature that happens to waffle about, including probably the bird population. Same over in America. Same over, Brazil's indigenous population. I mean, at least there you can make a certain argument in terms of America's, because there, of course, people arrived and then beat the shit out of the locals. Again, conquered people. And we need to get over this idea of self-loathing, that our ancestors were better at warfare than anybody else's. It's not a point of weakness, it should be one of pride. Yes, you lost a lot of wars to us, and now you live, in essence, at the mercy of your conquerors. Perhaps that is something you should consider on occasion, instead of continuously taking advantage of any itty-bitty bit of goodwill you possibly can find, including the extraction of special privileges, which is also a big thing in the US and Canada in particular, which, I mean, you even had the whole thing in California a while ago with the idea of reparations for slavery. Now, my American history isn't the best in the world, but I'm fairly sure California wasn't even a state at the time of the liberation of the slaves, so how exactly it is supposed to be paying reparations for slavery, I'm not entirely sure, but details, right? Guilt über alles. And a lot of people have also been looking at this map and feeling it to be, well, good old-fashioned racist. I mean, It sort of kind of is, because the entire word of Indigenous, yet again, is simply a play upon the majority's guilt complex, of making them feel ashamed of their actions and their previous achievements. Actions and achievements as well, they've actually had nothing to do with for quite some time now. The Americas were invaded not exactly yesterday, shall we say, and yet it is now used to extract, again, the aforementioned special privileges from the majority, whilst granting, in essence, nothing in return. There is no real argument for why the US should afford special privileges to a people it conquered. There is no special argument for why Norway should allow special privileges for people who arrived here after us, either. It is simply just a plea to be treated better on behalf of their, well, if we are being generous, culture, if we are being a little bit more honest, race. And I thought we'd be past that thing by now. Unfortunately, again, it has been turned into a political tool, which is why it's the United Nations that's pushing this. There was even another amusing post the other day about the EU, I think, promising, what was it, women's liberation from the power bloc that runs the European Union. I feel as if at that point it really is your fault more so than anything. End of the day, the simple fact is, we're past this now. Can't we just be like this, where there are no indigenous people? Can't the Americans say, no, America also sprang fully formed from the sea, much like France and Germany and England? It's always been here, and if you're living here, well, you must be American. And if you're American, I don't see why you should receive any special privileges. You're just another citizen within the nation of the United States. And suddenly, I imagine you'd see a lot of protests about a lot of people for the continuation of tax breaks, special allowances for, I don't know, gambling maybe, etc. Suddenly there will be a lot of racial and ethnic arguments for why they should retain these privileges as well. At which point, I do believe that it is our responsibility as a progressive and forward-thinking civilization to remind all of the indigenous populaces of the earth that, we don't believe in race anymore. It's merely a social construct, you see, a social construct that we've decided to abolish. So, happy Indigenous Peoples' Day.